work you do. It's part of the Snow Leopard operation. It's an honor for us as legislators of the City of Buenos Aires.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It is a deep honor, a great appreciation to be recognized by this body in such a beautiful state where we have been warmly welcomed and inspired to continue doing this work, given the history we have known for recognizing and supporting human rights, women rights.
I'm not translating. She understands it.
Thank
That's
you.
why it's not because I'm not translating your words.
Women understand. And it's a delight to see so many women.
Sorry, I understand, but my English is not fluently to speak. So I
Understanding.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you from the bottom of our heart.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Oh.
Hello, Brian. Good morning. I'm going to give her your what do you say, diploma, degree, your certificate. We are very proud to be here today. We would like to thank you for your work. Your work was is really important for women's rights and trade. The person's trade is a drama all over the world, and it's really important what you do and what you did for Afghanistan's women. So we are very proud to for your work and to be here, and we can recognize your work from the Buenos Aires City Parliament.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Quisiera decir gracias a mi hermano Fernando, vicepresidente, a sus legisladores, Claudio Romero, Presidente González Elena, Pablo Conversatorio, Leonel, Transmisión y los demás que están allá. Lo siento mucho que no puedo asistir directamente. Estoy muy cerca, aquí en Buenos Aires, en el Conversatorio. No es posible estar junto con ustedes, pero gracias profundamente del corazón, aparte de mi equipo y yo, y espero que podamos ayudar y trabajar juntos para ayudar a todos los afganos que merecen nuestra ayuda y están en caso peligro ahora mismo, pero podemos ayudarles a vivir una vida con esperanza y seguro y estamos muy felices de estar con ustedes. Su país y su ciudad tan acogedor y tan bonito. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Guadalupe.
Vivian y Verónica.
Bueno, escucha, vos tenés el texto
Sí,
este.
sí, me lo dio.
Bueno, entonces, si te parece, ¿qué te parece? Leo hasta acá y
Dale,
te doy el
dale,
micrófono.
dale.
Hola, hola. Ahí está, hay que doblar. Hola, hola. A ver, espera que me voy para acá. Hola, hola. Ahí está. Hola. Disculpe, Brian, ¿nos escucha bien?
Ujú.
Disculpe, ¿ahí nos escucha bien?
Muy buenos días. La Legislatura de la Ciudad Autónoma de Buenos Aires se complace en darles la bienvenida a este conversatorio en donde recibimos cálidamente a la delegación encabezada por el señor Brian Byrd, ex congresista norteamericano, y a los señores miembros de la Operación Snow Leopard, cual se destaca por promover ayuda humanitaria a ciudadanos afganos en riesgo y rescatar a mujeres y niños, niñas y adolescentes ante el riesgo de violación de sus derechos humanos por parte del régimen talibán que impera desde hace un año en Afganistán.
Good morning. The Legislature of the City of Buenos Aires is happy to welcome you to this dialogue, where we're very happy and pleased to warmly welcome the delegation headed by Mr. Brian Byrd, former American congressman, and the members of Snow Leopard Operation, which is renowned for providing humanitarian help to at-risk Afghan citizens and for rescuing women and children, young girls and adolescents, given the risk of the possibility of their human rights being violated by the Taliban regime, which is governing in Afghanistan for the last year.
El objetivo de este encuentro es fomentar el diálogo con representantes del Poder Legislativo y la sociedad civil a efectos de instalar el debate en virtud de la reversión de las conquistas históricas de las mujeres afganas desde que volvieron los talibanes al poder, la pérdida del derecho humano a la educación y la vulneración de derechos básicos fundamentales en pos del desarrollo humano.
The purpose of this meeting here today is to encourage dialogue with the representatives of the legislature and civil society in order to launch a debate about the reversal of historical achievements by Afghan women ever since the Taliban are back in power, and the loss of the human right to education and the violation of basic rights which are fundamental and needed for human development.
Agradecemos al señor Juan de Dios Cincunnegui por honrarnos con su visita y facilitarnos la oportunidad de contar hoy con estos destacados profesionales. También destacamos la presencia de las diputadas de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires, Marilú González Estebarena y Lucía Romano. A continuación, hará uso de la palabra la directora general de Relaciones Internacionales y Cooperación, abogada Ornella Bancilota, quien oficiará como moderadora de este acto.
We also wish to thank Mr. Juan de Dios Cincunnegui for honoring us with his visit and facilitating the opportunity of being able to reach out to these renowned professionals. And we will also are happy to hear now the Director General for International Relations and Cooperation, Mrs. Ornella Bancilota, who will moderate this event, and are also happy to count on Representatives Estebarena and Romano, who will take the floor in turn. Thank you very much.
Bueno, hola, muy buenos días para todos. Muchas gracias a ustedes especialmente por estar hoy aquí, a Juan de Dios que hizo posible su presencia y bueno, a las diputadas Lucía Romano y María Luisa González Estebarena que nos acompañan hoy acá. Hoy es un día muy especial para nosotros que estamos en la Casa Legislativa, que es donde se hacen generalmente las leyes y sí.
¿Querés que se lo hagan whispering a ellos?
Okay. Okay. Okay, Brian, do you understand Spanish? Okay. Sí, ¿no? Entiende. Okay. Okay, she's going to whisper to the... Okay. Okay, yes. Perfect, sorry. Yes, no, por favor. Ah, okay, perfect. Sí, sí, creo que todos. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Viene un poco.
I know.
We are going to change.
Oh, no, I like that title.
Okay, I don't think so.
Well earned.
Okay.
You earned it well. You deserve it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, let's go. Bueno, hoy es un día muy especial, como les decía, para todos los que trabajamos en la Casa Legislativa y además para los que nos dedicamos de alguna u otra manera a los derechos humanos, ya que tenemos la fortuna de recibir en nuestra casa vía Zoom hoy al señor Brian Baird y de forma presencial a los miembros de la Operación Snow Leopard, Leopardo de las Nieves, que llevan adelante este accionar incansable en pos de los derechos de miles de afganos que sufren los embates del régimen talibán, en especial las mujeres, niños, niñas y adolescentes. Como siempre digo, cada vez que hacemos un espacio de diálogo en nuestra legislatura, es muy importante generar estos debates y en lo personal para mí es un honor y un orgullo que se puedan dar dentro de la legislatura de la Ciudad Autónoma de Buenos Aires. Thank you. No, you're welcome. Please. Thank you. Yes, please. Los derechos humanos son, gracias, los derechos humanos son ese conjunto de normas que no solo reconocen, sino que también protegen la dignidad de todas las personas. A veces, los que nos dedicamos al derecho internacional, pensamos que es un poco tibia la protección o pensamos que no es suficiente. Sin embargo, creo que con acciones como las que ustedes realizan y que hoy vienen a contarnos son sumamente valiosas para la sociedad y también para la gobernanza global. Sabemos que en países como Afganistán los derechos humanos son vulnerados específicamente para ciertos sectores de la población y terminan perdiendo esa dignidad que el derecho les da y que intenta proteger. Por eso es fundamental la existencia de organizaciones y de operaciones como las de ustedes, porque son el nexo entre los derechos humanos y las personas que han sido despojadas de esos derechos deliberadamente de la dignidad básica que los amerita. Así que sin más preámbulos, les dejo con el señor Brian Bird para dar comienzo al conversatorio del día de la fecha sobre las acciones desarrolladas en defensa de los derechos humanos y reubicación de los afganos en situación de riesgo. Bienvenido, señor Bird. Para presentarlo, Brian Bird es fundador y director de la National Museum and Center for Service. Ejerció el cargo de diputado durante 12 años en el Congreso de los Estados Unidos. Es doctor en Psicología Clínica por la Universidad de Wyoming y se desempeñó en prácticas clínicas durante 20 años. Ha escrito 3 libros sobre esta temática. Además, fue presidente universitario y consejero de la Academia Nacional de Ciencias, Ingeniería y Medicina. Durante el tiempo que se desempeñó como congresista, recibió a miembros de las Fuerzas Armadas y organizaciones y personas de la sociedad civil que brindaban un servicio social en su distrito y en el extranjero. Bienvenido, Brian.
Quisiera decir especialmente gracias personalmente a nuestro amigo Juan de Dios Tigretti, que hizo todas las reuniones posibles. Y si me permiten, tengo un momento para explicar por qué estamos aquí. Como ya saben ustedes, es un mundo que la situación ha empeorado mucho desde la caída de Kabul el año pasado. Conscientes de lo que está pasando con mujeres y niños y hombres que han luchado por los derechos humanos es doloroso y empeorando cada día. Cuando alguien se ve a esto, puede sentir que no hay nada que podemos hacer, pero estamos aquí para ayudar a personas muy merecidas como mujeres y jueces, como periodistas, médicos y médicas que dedicaron sus vidas a ayudar a sus compañeros y las personas que están en peligro. Sobre todo, como pueden imaginar, los talibanes empezaron como extranjeros. Ustedes tienen un plan de derechos humanos y de lucha sobre la posibilidad de nos hemos creado además ellos son por el peligro por sí mismos, por los talibanes. Mis compañeros pueden explicar cómo podemos ayudarles y
because we felt a calling and because it's simply the right thing to do. So we are a larger organization, even though you only see a few of us here today. But we are so passionate about our cause and so grateful to be so warmly received. For us to have the leadership of a former congressman as part of our group is extraordinary, given how busy they are and how many demands of their time people ask. To have a man like Juan, who clearly feels like a brother to us because he understands not just the pain, but the drive that we must do this. We must do this. And to be welcomed here by a society that appreciates human rights, we suddenly feel like we're with family. And we no longer feel so isolated, but we feel together. And I thank you so much for this honor. I thank you for the work you do in your own country. I thank you for recognizing the need to help women in Taliban. Because if we don't stand up now for this group, then it's telling dictators all over the world they can do the same to women and children. And so we must continue. Our motto is, if not now, when? If not us, who? And now we feel we have a larger family, and I thank you so much. Thank you. And I like your humor.
Thank you.
Which you need in this work.
With me. That's the point.
That's right.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Karen. A continuación tenemos las palabras de Alexis Harmon. Es presidente del staff de la Oficina de Embajadores en la Embajada de la República Islámica de Afganistán en Washington, D.C. Se desempeñó previamente como asistente ejecutiva del embajador. Luego de la caída de la ciudad de Kabul, comenzó a trabajar con el equipo de Operación Flyaway y Operación Leopardo de las Nieves. Antes de formar parte de la embajada afgana, Harmon se desempeñó en diferentes posiciones como consultora en marketing y en la industria del entretenimiento. Bienvenida, Alexis. Un placer tenerte aquí.
Hello, and thank you all for welcoming us so warmly. We have just been so amazed at how open and warm and incredible the culture is here in Argentina. I mean, we came here knowing that it was that way, but experiencing it is truly something different, so thank you. As you mentioned, I was previously Chief of Staff to 2 different women ambassadors at the Embassy of Afghanistan in Washington, D.C., so working for the Afghan government in the United States. I want to just take a moment to talk about the people that we're talking about the Afghans that we're trying to help, because I think that often when we think of Afghanistan, we think of the war, we think of the Taliban, we think of all of the negative and horrible things. But at the embassy for years, we were working toward a better Afghanistan. We were working toward an Afghanistan that had 28% of parliament was women, which is higher than the global average. Afghan women had the right to vote before American women. The right to equality was guaranteed in the 1964 Constitution. So what's happening now is not what they know. It's not who they are. It is not the Afghanistan that they want. So we know a lot about a lot of the evacuations going on all around the world. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the only people being moved are those that are directly associated with governments. People who were translators for members of the US Army, people who were doing engineering on American bases. But there are so many people who were not associated with governments, but were doing incredible work that are now falling between the cracks. So Operation Snow Leopard is focusing on those people, especially those women, on women parliamentarians who are being targeted just because they were public figures who dared to push for democracy. We're talking about women judges who are now being persecuted and hunted down by Taliban because when they were in office, they were putting rapists and bomb makers in jail, and when the Taliban went across the country, they were opening up all of the jails and just letting the criminals out into the world. So now these women are being hunted in retribution for sentencing them before. So we have a group of women judges that we're working with very closely. We have women athletes who are being beheaded because sports are a sign of moral corruption. These are the women that we're talking about. These are the hearts that we are focusing on. And we are just so honored to be able to tell their stories today and to have hope to bring back to them from all of the wonderful and encouraging conversations that we've had here so far. So thank you all, not only for how you've treated us, but for how it encourages us moving forward to be able to give hope to these women and move forward our mission.
Muchísimas gracias, Alexis. Muchas gracias. Bueno, a continuación vamos a escuchar a Jason Hatch. Es un oficial retirado del ejército y diplomático en África subsahariana. Sirvió durante 24 años en el ejército y se desempeñó en diferentes posiciones de liderazgo. Fue comandante de la compañía del batallón de tanques durante las primeras acciones militares en Irak. Posteriormente, se desempeñó como agregado militar en varios países africanos durante 8 años. Luego de retirarse, fundó una consultora y se dedicó a trabajar en temas vinculados al tráfico de personas, sobrevivientes de desastres y desarrollo internacional dedicado a temas de educación y servicios públicos. También es miembro del Comité Directivo Nacional de Antiguos Alumnos para la Alianza del Año de Servicio. Bienvenido, Jason. Muchas gracias.
Thank you all for inviting us here. Afghanistan, for me, was unknown territory. I did not serve there. I didn't fight there. So when Karen called and asked if I could help, the only thing that I could bring to the table was some experience with the international organizations, UNHCR, UNICEF, World Food Program, that we thought could help with our project. We did not expect it to last this long, and we actually didn't expect it to be this successful. I know there's a lot left to do, but we're very proud of what we've done so far, and hopefully we'll enjoy a little more success in the future. What we've done in Afghanistan is we built a railroad, underground railroad, to get people from Afghanistan out to neighboring countries safely and securely. To do this, we use some of the best Afghan-American interpreters, Canadian, Afghan interpreters, who all served with our military and understand the threat better than we ever did. So they've built this pipeline. We're able to move people through it safely and legally, that's important to note, into the neighboring countries. In the neighboring countries, we also prioritize security, and we have established safe houses and safe compounds where our people will not be bothered by the local population and they are not under threat. That's a lot of work, but the hardest part for us has been to find an open door somewhere where we can send them. That's hard to do when you're a member of the government. And when I served as a diplomat, that was hard to do then. It is infinitely harder to do it when you have no authority, you're a private citizen, and people can refuse your calls. When Juan mentioned that Argentina may be an option for some people, it was beautiful sound to our ears because we were running out of hope. I don't know if this will be successful or not, but the fact that you opened your doors and listened to us, I'll be an Argentinian forever. So thank you for that.
Well, I'd like to thank you all again and to welcome you. I'm really proud what you did and that our country can collaborate with you in this operation. desperation that you carry during these years. And I like to remember an image that we saw all over the world when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan again. That was really shock for me, and that was the image of people hanging on a plane while it was taking off. And I think that's the image of desperation. The free world really sad because, as you said, it was a huge step back for human rights. I think it's a war against the free world, a war against the free world, and especially a war on women. There's a phrase that I like to remember in these cases, in these occasions, which is never took your rights for granted. As minorities, women, LGBTQ people, people of different races, I think we should have this phrase printed in our forehead because you can never stop fighting when you belong to a minority. And that's why I like to thank you really much because those women need our help, and there is not just them, there is us. What happens to them happens to us. And as I said, this is a war against the free world, and we all of us who want to live in a free world should stand with this cause. So I'd like to welcome you again, and I'm proud that you felt comfortable in our country. This is the President Alfonsín Salon. President Alfonsín was the first president after the last dictatorship we had in Argentina. He became president in 1983, and this is a very special salon for us, and represents the human rights. In here, you can see in there the president with one of the Plaza de Mayo mothers, who were mothers of people who were killed during the dictatorship. We call here disappeared because they never, some people we never can found their bodies. And it was a really sad part of our story. So that's why we have a compromise with the human rights. And in Latin America, our country has many policies for women and minorities, especially LGBTQ people, and we're like a fair house for the region in laws and policies we have for that community, because it's our community. So thank you again, and you're very welcome, and I hope we can see you again very soon. Thank you.
Bueno, a continuación escuchamos las palabras de Juan de Dios Incunegui, que hoy facilitó también que sea posible esta visita y que me consta que es un trabajador incansable por no solo hacer un gran networking con gente que lo necesita, sino también que es muy generoso al momento de compartir sus conocimientos y también sus contactos, que en algunos casos, la mayoría de las veces son amigos también. Así que bueno, un placer, Juan, muchas gracias por todo.
Thank you very much, Ornella. You are wonderful. No, I think it's very important, this meeting, because we have been talking a lot about human rights and state policy in Argentina, but for you to listen directly from the Congresswoman what she was saying, I think it's really very, very important. Argentina is exactly like she said, a country that we live a lot of bad things, bad times in the country, so we know perfectly about suffering from our people. So we have incorporated, as the Congresswoman said, and also Ornella at the beginning in the introduction, all kind of recognition of rights, human rights to our people and to everybody who comes to the country. And we promote those human rights abroad also. So I just think that it will be amazing if the legislature, and I really don't know, I have not been following the legislature, but I know that this terrible felt of Kabul and then what happened later was shocking for everybody, as she said. So I would like just if you can tell her what had been happening this week, in particular your meetings with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because you are putting this issue, very important issue, in the agenda of Argentina in some way, because you are updating what is happening in Afghanistan. And I think it's very important, the support of the legislature, just to listen to you and to say to everybody what is happening. And we expect that the national authorities are evaluating this and that the result will be positive. So this is just a starting point. And again, welcome to Argentina, to the city of Buenos Aires. And I really appreciate and thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you, Ornella, and the rest for setting this meeting. Thank you, Congressman, also for coming here, and to the operation members to travel to Argentina for this.
Sí, sí. Want to talk about it? Okay. I'll have him talk. Okay.
We began our meetings, we stopped off and visited our U.S. ambassador and had a very good discussion, just explained what we were doing. We didn't ask for any help because we're a private organization, but it was good and interesting to hear their take. The most encouraging meetings we had were with your Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Foreign Relations. Thankfully, the Director of Human Rights, the Chief of Documents and Consular Affairs, and then Chief of Migration were attended. And we'll tell you that we've talked to easily 20 countries over the past year, and the questions that they asked were exactly the right questions that a country should ask. And it was our first time hearing those kind of questions. Very direct, very professional, and very clear. So that we were already off to a very good start there. The additional meetings that we've had, well, let me go back. With the Ministry of Foreign Relations, we've got to start to work with them for now. So we have a lot of information that we have to present to them to explain our security protocols so that everyone understands that we know who these people are. They are not a threat. We completely understand those concerns. And then some of the immigration specifics. So they've asked for quite a lot of information there, and we will get that to them in the coming week. We have drafted, we've actually signed agreements with other countries, so they've also asked for a copy of that so they can go over it, and we can draft something if Argentina decides to accept some of these refugees. Then we'll need the documents in place. Luckily today, we found out that the UNHCR rep, we're going to have meetings with them, the UN High Commission for Refugees here. They're going to play an integral part in this process. We wanted to meet with them this week, but it just was not possible, so we'll do so next week over Zoom. All of the other meetings that we've had with the Chamber of Deputies, with the senators, with the circle of legislators, they've been phenomenally supportive. We were not expecting any of this. What we expect is have to bargain and fight our way in, past barriers. So that tells us that Argentina is serious and that we have a chance. So that's all we can ask.
Muchas gracias, Jason. No sé si alguien del público quiere hacer alguna pregunta. ¿Alguna pregunta que le quieran realizar a la delegación?
I want to say we've eaten a lot of meat,
I
too.
don't know. Maybe to Karen. A question for Karen? No. Yes. Sí.
Well, first, thank you for being here. Actually, I want to thank you all, Alexis, Jason, Karen, Brian, on the other side, Representative Lucia, and I want to congratulate you for the tasks that you have undertaken. First, my question, because I would like to understand or fully understand what you do, I would like to know what criteria you observe in order to determine who is going to be evacuated and who is going to remain on ground. And I would like to know how often do you carry out those selection processes? And then also, I would like to understand or to know, basically, taking into consideration the UN gender alerts that have been published in the last year, my question is, what do you foresee or forecast concerning the situation in Afghanistan in the short run? Thank you.
She'll talk to the UN. Thank you for your question, Alejandro. I've asked Jason to address the selection process and Alexis to address the UN issue, please.
So we've established criteria that we use for the selection process. The number one criteria is the threat. So are they going to be killed? Did their previous occupation put them in such a dangerous position that they would be known if they tried to go across a border or through a Taliban checkpoint, and would they be killed? So we move those folks up. We also do our best, because our mission was to evacuate those that are not on anybody else's list. You know, our list is predominantly women and girls. We have additional criteria that we use. Some of it has to do with immigration. So does this family have a path to Germany or to the United States or something like that? If they do, that solves a problem for us, because we can get them to the neighboring country and they have onward movement. But ultimately, our biggest weighted criteria is the threat that they face.
Jason, before Alexis, can you hear me all right? Yeah, thank you. I just want to add, it is incredibly difficult to make those decisions, and it weighs on us. So it's, as Jason said, number one, if they're going to be killed. And just bluntly speaking, there's about 19 million women and girls who have completely lost their rights. So it is those who have been on the forefront, the most vocal, that are being hunted, that we seek to help bring out, so that they could then be a voice for the voiceless. They can keep the issue alive, so that we just don't let this fade away and just say, that's Afghanistan, it's just the way it is, which is unacceptable. But you can imagine Jason and his team, and there's a large amount of Afghan Americans and Afghans that work with us, how difficult it is for them to have to figure out who we select. And as Jason said, it's also whether they are ready to leave, given the trauma they've experienced. Some still want to stay and find the fight, even though they're under direct threat. And others need a break, if you will. They need to leave and want to continue the fight as well. So those are additional things. but I also want to say that there is a huge amount of weight in talking to people, and we talk to them every day on encrypted digital software, and we talk to these families every day. And so we hear what many of them have been living for 12 months, hidden, some of them going house to house because they're so sought after, like female pilots, judges. These are athletes. There was, as Alexis said, a young woman was killed for playing soccer, not just killed, but beheaded to intimidate all women and all girls playing sports. Just very unacceptable. So, Alexis, can you address the UN?
Definitely. So the future is bleak, as you can imagine. I'll start there. Over the last year, the Taliban have really been figuring out how they want to handle this, how much they can push, how bad they can be without soliciting a huge crackdown, right? Or in order to continue to have funds to come in. But I think that they've been emboldened over time as more extremist elements of the Taliban get more power. So over the last year, we've seen the laws get continuously worse. We've seen restrictions on women traveling alone. We've seen burqas be reintroduced into society and be required. We've seen women beaten for not wearing them. In just the last couple of days, perfume was banned. So I know that that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you think about all of the ways in which it's restricting people's right to be themselves and just have any expression, women are turned away, or girls, young children are turned away from school just for wearing the wrong color head covering. It's so ridiculous. Well, in addition to that, though, they've been promising for a year that girls would be allowed back into school. Slowly, they've been allowing girls under the age of 12 back into school. They usually don't go. The security risk is just too high, but when they can, they're there. They also are allowing some women back into universities. They're segregated in different classrooms. They don't have enough professors. It's incredibly difficult for them to even make it into the universities. But here's the gap. Between 12 and college, they're not allowed back in school. They're supposed to have been reinstituting it for months, many, many months, but they continue to push it off and not do it, and I don't think that they ever will. Because consider this, women right now are able to go to college a little bit, but if there's no one feeding in, there's no group this year that can go into college this year. So over time, there will be no educated women, a completely lost generation. That's with education. In addition to that, we say that women aren't allowed to have jobs generally, right? They've been fired as professors, as doctors, as civil servants. They just hired 800 women in the government, actually, in the Ministry of the Prevention of Vice and the Promotion of Virtue. They just hired 800 women to crack down on other women. That's it. That's the only job that you're allowed to have, because the men can't even do it right. It's just too taboo. It's too wrong. So that's the only job you're allowed to have as a woman in Afghanistan right now, more or less. If you're widowed, you're still not allowed to work. You beg in the street. So women's situation is getting increasingly dire as family leaves or family dies and they're left alone just to beg for their children. And as food security worsens, I'm sure that you've also been reading what the UN is saying about the food security situation in Afghanistan, especially with the war in Ukraine. The World Food Program is not able to bring as much in to even support the food crisis going on because all the flooding is ruining the crops. As that happens, girls are often sold for food, child brides, selling just children as servants, as brides, as everything. It's just horrible. So girls will be increasingly victimized as a result of the food insecurity. And lastly, I would say that as time progresses, these women that have been in hiding, it gets harder and harder. Families less willing to hide them in their basement. Their savings run out and they're not able to stay somewhere as safe, or the Taliban just get better information. So if I may, during our time here, we've mentioned that we're talking to people every single day. During our time here, just 2 nights ago, we lost someone from our list. He was assassinated. And this will continue to happen. He's not the first one that we've lost. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he probably won't be the last. And as time passes on, these women will become more and more hunted and found more and more often. I hope that answers your question.
I would just like to add, that's why it's so important for you to ask these questions of us, for you to have this dialogue in your own legislatures, so that you are seen as the leaders of human rights and you are helping these women. And that man who died for supporting women, that's why he was killed. So all of you, by keeping the discussion here, whether you accept people or not, that's separate. It is the point of having these discussions in public, on record, that gives us faith and sustains us and gives us encouragement, because then we know that the seriousness, and then we can go to other countries and say, Argentina is having this discussion. Yes, there's a global pandemic. Yes, there is financial crises all over the world, but the dignity of human rights is still the most important issue, because we'll work through all of these other issues. We'll find a way. I have no doubt that Argentina will. But we will not lose human rights along the path. We will not relegate women to slavery and children to being just seen as an object. One of the gentlemen that is in one of the families, he wrote me about his 12-year-old daughter. He said, I'm so proud of her. Nadia got perfect scores in school, but this will be the last year she's allowed in school. Under the Taliban, she is just meat. And this is not what I want for my daughter. So these are the people you are supporting by just hearing us today, because we can go back and say, people care. It might seem like a world away, and in fact it is, right? Around the world. It is, but it is still, they care. And it is truly, truly hope that that is committed. And then they can go on a little longer, and they need that. So thank you. I think the Congressman's very good at.
Muchas gracias por las respuestas y las intervenciones. No sé si alguien más quiere hacer alguna pregunta, consulta. Yes. Yes, you. Por supuesto.
Yes, I'd like to ask you something about the slavery that you mentioned. If you can tell us about the sex trafficking of women in Afghanistan, and how are you dealing with that?
I'm going to ask Jason to comment on this, because Jason spent 8 years in anti-human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, and he understands this area, because it's, quite frankly, it's not too painful to talk about, but it's disgusting. It just violates every sense of decency.
Yeah, I'm sure it's women too, though. So, trafficking networks, they look for these kind of geopolitical events to move in and pull young girls and young boys out, because it's very easy for them to do that. There are no authorities. The Taliban apparently don't care about young girls. So if they're taken to another area, across a border or whatever, it happens all the time. We know that within Afghanistan itself, the biggest problem there is sex trafficking, but it's for boys. And what is the name of? Bachabazi is a cultural thing. I don't know if. Oh, it's Pashtun. And they paint the boys up as like girls, right?
They do, because they're segregated.
Oh, okay. So it's just it's a bizarre and disgusting act, but they target the young boys inside the country. The problem outside of Afghanistan, you have such massive refugee populations in Iran, in Pakistan, to some extent in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, like you saw with the Syria crisis. I was in Turkey at the camps, and I was there looking for trafficking networks that were preying on the young women. I guarantee you it's going on in those countries. I don't know where they're feeding. That would be focused mainly on women, young girls, but I promise you that it's there, and probably a lot more systemic than anyone realizes.
Alexis, could you add something?
Please. So the United States State Department every single year issues a report called the Trafficking in Persons Report. And it basically just covers human trafficking around the world for various purposes, any form of slavery, right? It also includes child soldiers. Afghanistan was ranked every single year. For many years, they were considered to be, so it's 1 is great, 2 is you're not doing so well, 3, at risk is you're doing very poorly, but you're making efforts to do better, and then there's just flat 3. So for many years, Afghanistan was 3 at risk, meaning that it was a horrible situation, but they were making efforts. However, near the end, for the last several years of even the democratic regime, Afghanistan fell into the 3 category. The reason why is the war was so intense that the government basically put that issue completely to the side. So there were hundreds of thousands of young boys that were being preyed upon all across the country and being trafficked. There were an immense amount of child soldiers that were being stolen from villages by the Taliban and pulled in. That's a big recruitment tactic for the Taliban. So a lot of these children didn't know any different and were pulled in against their will. So trafficking underneath the Taliban has only gotten even worse, as you can imagine, because now there is no trafficking in persons report analysis of what's going on. There's just complete chaos and freedom to be as disgusting as you want. So Bachabazi is most popular among Pashtuns, which is the ethnic group of the Taliban, and it runs rampant. They do say that they're attempting to crack down, but we think that that is just something that they are saying to the international community to try to solicit aid money. We've seen absolutely no signs of any efforts to crack down on sex trafficking.
Thank you for your answer. Yes, I'm really shocked, and I was thinking that during the war, in general, the sex traffic is like a thing put aside. It's a thing that is repeated during history, during the Holocaust. For example, we have recent testimonies about sex violence during the Holocaust. It was something that was put aside. It's not that important. So I'm really shocked about what you told us. And again, I hope we can continue working on this issue all over the world, and that this is a thing that is repeated against women, child and women in wars and in this kind of regimes. Thank you.
It is shocking which is why we appreciate your questions, and I appreciate your questions, Alejandro. It's so shocking to hear about her pervasiveness. And the Taliban's rule is, it's criminal. It's criminal what they do to each other, and to hear about what they do to even young boys. We don't often think about that. We talk about women and girls' rights, which was what brought us there. But then to hear about this underground, it really it pulls at your heart, right? I mean, what a parent is meant to protect, you know? So that is why we also deal with that. And there are many other groups we work with to help us learn and understand. But our focus in our operation is we have about 4,000 on our list. We have 900, and it's about 87? 987 that are high-value targets. And of those, we have about a couple hundred which are imminent, that we spend a lot of time moving. And so we hear all of these stories about what happens to their families, to their friends, how they're worried about their neighbors who are going to sell them for information, for food, or for their children, so that their neighbors will protect themselves for now. So that is the entire country. And so we continue with our mission of helping who we can help that we believe will be the leaders to continue and one day, hopefully, help Afghanistan go back to the progress they were. Because I say this, for 20 years, the headlines here would always read about the bombings, right? Or the roadside killings. They didn't talk about hundreds of thousands of girls graduating from college and high school. They didn't talk about women parliamentarians. They don't talk about women judges. They don't talk about women athletes. And those are successes. Bob Ness, our senior advisor, could not be here today. He had to leave a day early. But he was helping an Afghan organization that literally helped 250,000 girls get an education, rural girls, full education, graduating from high school. They were on this trajectory, but there's a saying in the news that if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. So we bought into the idea that it was only war, only pain, only lack of progress. And now when you look around Afghanistan and you hear that there's all these female doctors who can no longer practice their craft, many who went to universities in Europe or North America, perhaps even here. And their crime is being a woman, they can't practice, or even worse, if they actually followed their creed to help anyone. So if they helped an American, if they helped a Canadian, if they helped a German soldier, they were now considered the enemy. This is, to me, incomprehensible, which is why, to bring it back to you, greeting us here today, giving us this acknowledgement, is above and beyond what we expected. But to ask you to continue the conversation in your legislatures, in your discussions, and put it on record so that we can tell, I know I said this earlier, but I cannot emphasize this enough, so we can tell other countries, we can tell our own country, right, this is what's going on. There are leaders in Argentina that care.
Something very short. I just want to say that first step, of course, always for us is to understand. So it's very important, the information. I think there are a lot of things we didn't know and we still don't know about what is going on, what is happening in Afghanistan. So that's the first thing. For example, the parliament doesn't exist anymore. So we talk about parliamentarians, but it was dissolved, of course, by the Taliban. And the same happened with the judicial power, and there are no more institutions, so we know what that means, no? So there are no rights, you are like naked, so. And the second one, I think it's important, is to start talking about real cases, one by one. I think, of course, every life matters, so I want to talk about a little of hope. So I don't know if you believe in miracles, but once the delegation was here in Buenos Aires already, a professor, a colleague from the Universidad Austral, from the School of Government, called me, a very strange call, because we received an application from an Afghan student who wants to come to study here in Argentina. So we decided as a university, of course, to give him a fellow. We are going to, for not paying the school fees and that. But in the case we are successful, and as an example, just as an example, it will be amazing to welcome him in a proper way, and a special way, and I think that there we have a role, particularly in this big door that it is the city of Buenos Aires. So I think it's a very good example, and of course, if we are lucky and we can bring more women and kids from Afghanistan to Argentina, we can. We will be training. I mean, we will receive them, and I think it's not a problem, in my opinion. The different culture. We are a country that. I would like to listen to you, Congresswoman, about that. Yes, about the different cultures, because I think we are very good in that, receiving people and then to work together.
Okay, yes, thank you. I was thinking about that in a moment during the conversation, and then I lost, so thank you for the question. Yes, Argentina has, we are mixed we have a huge mix of cultures in here. I'm Italian descendant, for example, and we have a lot of Spanish and Italian descendants in here, and colonies of German people, Scottish. Last years, a lot of immigration from Latin America, Venezuela. After what was happening in Venezuela with their actual regime, we have a huge immigration from Venezuela. So yes, we have I think it's a virtue of receive different cultures and different people from all over the world, and it's like a DNA of us. Yes, this is who we are. We are a result of mixed cultures. So it's a characteristic of our country. So that's why we feel so alike immigrants, because in a way or another we are all immigrants. Our fathers, our mothers, or our grandfathers or grandmothers were immigrants. So yes, I think that this is why we are this kind of society. Thank you.
Thank you, gracias.
Gracias, Lucía. Ahí está Brian, que nos levantó la mano vía Zoom. Brian. Sí, perfecto, perfecto.
What Operation Snow Leopard is trying to do is all the powers. But we can find courageous people who stood for democracy, stood for the rule of law, who stood for women's rights. So our task, we've identified them, shelter, even as we speak. People are in hiding either in Afghanistan, most of them, and some small numbers in safe houses in nearby countries. Leopard has evacuated more than that successfully. We'd like to get as many on our list as nations, and that's we ask the people of Argentina to say, can we open our hearts and open our arms and accept some of these people in? Not all at once, but little by little, in small groups. Because once we get one small group out and they arrive and we help them get adjusted, we can then move another small group to safety. But there's only so many we can move at a time, and the rest are just waiting and hoping. And even if they're waiting and hoping, the Taliban, we're
Muchas gracias, Brian. Tenemos una pregunta más por allá, ¿no? Un minuto y ahora. Última, va.
Promise it's the last. I've been hired to ask questions. No, I got a question. This is at a personal level. I don't want to be intrusive, but I would like to know how you cope with this situation on a daily basis. Karen, you mentioned that Jason worked with organized crime or human trafficking networks for 8 years. You also mentioned that a member of your team passed away earlier this week. So I'd like to know how you face this. I understand that the benefits are higher than the drawbacks or costs, but, well, how you can cope with this? I mean, I would like to understand that, how you handle this. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'll ask each of my teammates to give a quick comment on that. I'm a former U.S. Army officer. I'm here as a private citizen. I don't represent any government, and we self-funded because we simply care. And we felt this was the right thing to do. The reason why I mentioned my military background again is that there is a great plague in the United States military where 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. It is beyond awful. One of the reasons we stood up was to provide hope, right? There is a way, because much of that is survivor's guilt. And I take strength from having friends like Jason, seeing Alexis, the next generation of leader, the fact that a former congressman would see the value in our work and be a leader for us. These meetings, they don't happen without Brian Baird and Juan de Dios, and I take strength from that. I do get emotional. Well, honestly, I'm a very passionate person. I should have been Latino or Italian, right? Yeah. I get this culture, believe me, and I love it. But there are many dark moments, right? There really are. But I have learned coping mechanisms, and I've learned how to seek support and talk to others so we can work through the emotion. So it's not too intrusive for me to talk honestly, because there is pain, and there's nights where you literally curled up and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I here? I'm taking people's lives in my hands by doing this. But the reality is, I'm so angry at the Taliban. I'm so angry with some people in our own government for the decision. I'm so upset that drives me to look past this and to keep moving on and continue to do what's right. And finally, Jason had a young woman. Her name is Samaya. I'll let her tell her. She was 22 years old. She was an activist, a leader. Her father was assassinated last July by the Taliban as they were sweeping through the country. This young girl was brought to our attention because she was taking care of her sick mother, and she had a younger sister. And she was fearless in her attempt to find a way for freedom. And that bravery captures your heart. And it also helps you. There's a lot of pain, but when you see other young people stand up and take every risk, she was fleeing through the night, place to place. She wrote Jason, and I mean, it was very emotional when she wrote her and she said, "My entire life is in this backpack, and I don't want to be left behind." It's a lot. So we take strength from each other, and that young lady right now is working at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And we are very, very proud of her and her courage and resilience to go through all of this, and the role model she represents. And ultimately, that's the best healing when you see this pain, is to see the joy and success. And knowing that this girl isn't just going to survive, but she is going to thrive. And that makes us very proud. I hope that answers your question, because it's quite honestly a complex one, right? And it has many other things. Jason, do you mind sharing? And then Alexis?
I'll just tell you that the easiest way to deal with, you know, the fatigue or the stress or whatever is that every 30 minutes I have a message on my WhatsApp or on Signal from somebody that's in a basement or in the mountains or hiding in Afghanistan and is fearing for their lives, that are quite honestly gets me past whatever issues I might be having, because there's a person on the other end of that needs my help. I hope that helps.
I think that they've talked a lot about the people that we're working with and how devastating it is to see what they're going through and to lose them. We've all lost someone at this point, people that we spoke with every single day. But there's another element as well, and that is the fatigue of trying to get them out, right? Not just the interpersonal, but also the fact that for months and months and months, we did not sleep. We were in contact with so many governments, and so many closed their doors. So in addition to the emotional difficulty of losing people and talking to these people and carrying their emotional burdens, we had to deal with the cynicism of the world. And I have to say that it's moments like this, these little bright spots, the people who have cared, like Juan, truly. You inspire me. The people here have inspired me. And I am just so grateful to you all, because it is people like you that have gotten us through this.
Around the world said, we'll take right. When Afghanistan fell, dozens of countries around the world stood up and said, we'll take Afghans, we'll take some. How many did? Handful. And even those, it was very, very difficult to get people in. There's a difference between being bureaucratic and thorough, right? And it was just so disheartening to see all these press releases. We're going to be helpful, we're going to care, and then to realize they were just a press release. They weren't backed, they were just words, but there was no action. Yeah, so I agree with Alexis, just being here and embracing us, as Congressman Baird said, in this way is incredibly helpful to us. And I thank you for this. And your questions are also great. Jason mentioned earlier about your Ministry of Foreign Relations. It was actually a relief to us to be talking to people who were warm and welcoming, yet professional and very detailed. And meaning they weren't a bureaucrat like, hey, we're just going to hold you up. These are just true concerns of documentation and security. And we don't have countries ask that. And then when they don't ask that, we know that they're not real, right? They're just taking our meetings and our time just to say we checked a box. But to be that way and say, to be so direct and honest is helpful, because we can only move forward, right, unless we are direct and honest and we ask each other these questions. So everywhere we've gone, we've met a level of professionalism that has exceeded expectations. And that's a fact, you know? Because you're great at warmth, carne, sweets. I must have gained 20 pounds this week, and I loved it. Yeah, oh, it's all right. Oh, yeah.
No se pregunta. How are you there?
Just a good example. I've been reading in the newspapers about Japan. Imagine Japan and the Japanese people and the Afghani people. They are very different, really. And we are talking about basically an island. So we are talking here in Argentina to the 8th country in size in the world. We have a huge country, a population relatively small, and we have the experience to mix cultures in the country. So I just want to say that you just not inspire us, but also, in my opinion, is something good for our country to show to the world that we are people with good values, and we are here not just for ourselves, but also to contribute for having a better world. I think it's very important. It's an opportunity for Argentina also. Thank you.
Bueno, excelente. Yo, para finalizar, quiero, en principio, agradecerles, en primer lugar, que hayan estado hoy aquí compartiendo esta mañana, agradecerle a la diputada Lucía Romano por su participación, y también quiero destacar que la diputada Lucía Romano forma parte de las comisiones permanentes de la Legislatura de la Ciudad, de Derechos Humanos y de acá de la Legislatura, y también de la Comisión de Niñez, Adolescencia y Juventud, y que, bueno, que trabaja, presidente, perdón, de la Comisión de Niñez, Adolescencia y Juventud, y vocal de la Comisión de Derechos Humanos de la Legislatura, y que también trabaja incansablemente por estos derechos, y que también su presencia acá no solo nos honra, sino que también creo que es sumamente enriquecedora para todos ustedes. Respecto de nosotros como legislatura, también nuestro compromiso se va a mantener firme, no solamente en el día de hoy, sino también a futuro para todo lo que necesiten. Recién estábamos conversando con Juan, que fue su idea de por ahí presentar algún proyecto de declaración para declarar de interés a la operación en sí. Y bueno, y esperamos nuevamente tenerlos muy pronto en Argentina, por favor, será un placer. Y finalmente, una última pregunta, ya que yo no hice ninguna pregunta a lo largo del conversatorio, porque le di prioridad a otros y me dejé para el final. Yo los últimos 2 años fui directora de la Comisión de Educación acá en la Legislatura, y me agarró toda la pandemia en ese sentido, atravesando un momento sumamente difícil para el mundo. Y para Argentina, con el porcentaje que tenemos de pobreza y nuestra economía, como bien en un momento mencionó Karen, fue bastante complejo porque agravó problemas que ya venían gestándose, también a nivel mundial, ¿no? Por datos que había realizado la UNESCO en el último reporte del año 2018, que había una gran cantidad de personas fuera de la escolarización, que también era uno de los temas que hablaba Alexis. Y me toca muy de cerca, no solo por venir de una familia de docentes de la vieja escuela, desde mi bisabuela hasta yo, que doy clases en la universidad, y también en un secundario para adultos. Pero la pregunta que yo les quería hacer era si ustedes tenían alguna estadística, algún dato duro de cómo afectó la asunción del régimen talibán, si ha afectado los números de escolarización en las escuelas, o si ha habido, más allá de lo que contaba Alexis, muy bien, que mencionó precedentemente del tema de la veda para algunos estudiantes a partir de determinada edad, si ustedes tenían alguna información o algún organismo específico que se ocupe de brindarles ese tipo de información puntualmente en Afganistán. Esa era mi pregunta, y con eso, bueno. Gracias.
So precise statistics are very hard to come by because there's so little foreign presence on the ground, and of course the Taliban don't care about these numbers. And to be clear, you asked, I couldn't hear the translation, so I want to make sure you were asking for specific statistics regarding how the Taliban have impacted girls in schools, right? Just schools, or was there anything else? Okay, great. So before the Taliban took over, more than 50% of women, of college students were women. And now there's no precise statistics, but they're estimated to be, gosh, maybe 10%, right? But as I mentioned before, there's no incoming class. So next year, there'll be students who are already enrolled, but there'll be no high school students who are able to apply to college. So that number will decrease over time. There are no girls between the ages of 12 and 18 in school. It's completely closed. And then underneath the age of 12, again, the numbers are not clear, but my guess would be maybe 30% of students are girls, maybe. That's generous, but it's certainly far less than half. It's not equal.
Ahí está. Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Bueno, finalmente, Juan, ¿vos querés decir algo más? Bueno, les agradecemos muchísimo la presencia hoy acá. Brian, muchísimas gracias por haber compartido esta mañana con nosotros. Nos vemos pronto. Muchas gracias. Adiós, gracias.
And I'm
Muchas gracias.
Argentinian.
Yes, of course, we are going to adopt you.
Will you?
Yes, of course.
Please,
Yes,
I wanna be
yes, please.
adopted.
We are going to eat dulce de leche.